Hello and welcome to our masterclass all about question and introduction design. This is really intended to get you off to the races so that you are prepared to write your own questions, you know how to use all the resources that we have available to you, and you are comfortable writing introductions. I'll start by introducing myself. My name is Tila Beischer, and I'm a customer program manager here at ThoughtExchange. So I work with partners like yourself to help you write really effective questions based on your outcomes, based on the goals that you want to achieve with the exchange. And my pronouns are she, her, and hers. And I'd like to begin with a land acknowledgement. So I'd like to respectfully acknowledge that the land on which I live, work, and play is in the unceded territory of the Silks Okanagan peoples. Here is our agenda for today. So we're going to spend about 30 minutes together today, and we're really going to dig deep into question and introduction design. Your learning outcomes today are that you'll know how to understand and really know how to structure effective questions. You'll know which key pieces to include in introductions and how to do an introduction video. And then we're also going to explore the Exchange Studio together so that you can familiarize yourself with what Exchange templates are already available to you. At the end, we're going to wrap up with a Q&A exchange. I will mention that I am alone on this call, so if you pop a question in the chat, I will get to it at the end, or you can hold your questions for that Q&A exchange. So let's dive right into talking about question design and what does a really great exchange question do and how do we actually define great? And so a really great exchange question has three different functions. It will inspire your participants to enter really valuable thoughts. It's also going to inspire and generate ratings from others. And then it drives actionable results. So you're creating a data set that you can actually inform action plans and have strategic outcomes from it. And so those three functions are our three exchange steps. They're share, rate, and discover, or share, rate, and work with results. And your question needs to serve all three steps. Valuable exchange questions inspire both thinking and learning. It's really important to design your question for people that are sharing the thoughts and rating the thoughts, having people think about both sides. And so that looks like asking questions that are really truly open-ended and that couldn't be perceived as having a yes/no answer. And there's three really strong pillars that you can keep in mind to have a really effective question. So you see these on the screen right here. The first is that it's simple. Make your question as clear and meaningful as possible. Be certain and be sure of what you're asking and remove as many filler words as possible. We want you to avoid acronyms, avoid short forms, and keep the context for the introduction section. A good example of why you want to keep it simple is if you're going to be offering your question in multiple languages, you want it to be translatable to other languages. So if you have acronyms and they go through Google Translate, it might not be clear and simple enough for someone reading it in a language other than English. The second component is that it makes sense during rating. And so people in your exchange are rating the thoughts of others on a scale of 1 to 5 based on how much they agree with the response to the question. And so your question should spark that rating. For example, you want to ask, instead of how can we support you, a question like how could we best support our team will inspire people to be thinking beyond themselves. And this third point here is about being direct. And this is about asking the question that needs to get asked. We can see that it can be tempting to try to control the conversation by asking something incredibly limiting or leading. And what we want is for you to avoid the limiting or leading questions and to ask the open and earnest questions that pull out the why. Remember that sentiment and the information that you're able to understand around the why is one of the values of ThoughtExchange. It helps you to get to the heart of the issue in a much faster and more efficient way. So asking questions like that will drive your question design much more effectively. And let me ground this in experience for you. So we were working with a client who really wanted to ask 5 different exchange questions. They had 5 exchanges planned. They wanted to know how happy are our staff, how do they feel connected, what tools do they need, how do you feel about your compensation, etc. And when we asked them why they wanted to run these 5 exchange questions, they spoke about a recent spike in staff turnover, and they needed to understand why people were leaving in order to address it in the future. And that statement right there, that was the heart of the matter. So they were able to actually craft their question around what are some important things we need to focus on to retain our staff. All right, and I want to give you some tips, some tangible language and phrasing strategies to consider when you're writing your own question. The first is that it is truly open-ended. You want to empower your participants to share the ideas that matter the most to them and ensure that the questions are truly open-ended. If someone can respond with a single word or idea, you're going to want to think about ways that you can engage them in a deeper level. The second tip is to have your question be pluralized. And so you can encourage people to share multiple answers and already be in a bit of a rating mindset by asking, instead of what do you think about, a question like what are your thoughts? Or instead of what thing do we need to do, what are some things that we could do? The third point here is prioritized. And so if you're able to include qualifier words like most important, most impactful, then people are already thinking in a rating mindset. And this last part here is keeping things really general. So avoid acronyms, don't be overly specific, and have really clear language for translation. If you're an education leader and you're writing questions and you are going to have students involved in the conversation, you're going to want to keep in mind reading comprehension level as well. If you are reaching out to students, we usually recommend 5th grade and above. So write the question in the way that a 5th grader could read and understand. All right, we're going to dig into the Exchange Studio after we get through this slide deck, but for now, we're going to talk about introductions. The Exchange Studio, for those of you who haven't seen it, it's a resource of templated Exchange questions, which you can use and actually just create directly from. So next we have our introductions. And in an Exchange, you have the question, that's your one big broad question, and then you have the introduction. This is a written component for your participants to read before they share and rate the thoughts of others. And it's really key to giving them the context that they need to appropriate or to participate in the most impactful way. And this is text. So you do have a text box that you can fill out and write, and it's read by the participant. You also have the opportunity to add a video in. And that can be a really handy way if you want to add a face or a human element to the Exchange. If you're a new leader and you're using the Exchange as a way to introduce yourself to your team, create the video so that they can see your face. And that's also really useful if you're reaching out organization-wide and you think you might be inviting people who don't know who you are to the Exchange or haven't met you. A video introduction can be one of the best ways to engage with them. In any introduction, really simple 3-step formula. You want to include your why. And so this is the purpose of the Exchange from both your perspective and your participants. You want to include your progress, and this is connecting the why to action or connecting the why to an ultimate outcome that you're going to find. So let me give an example. If you were hosting an Exchange and your why was that you want to identify what professional development opportunities the team needs, your progress would be, we're going to use this information to build a catalog of resources and to set up a series of professional development over the next month or the next couple months. The third point here is using a call to action. And every Exchange, I think, needs a call to action. It's helpful information about how to participate, when you're going to report back, when does the Exchange close, and if you're using any moderation or not. There is a sample introduction on the help site that I'll show you when we hop into the product. So I'm going to do that right now. I'm going to show you some resources to make this work a lot easier and clearer for you. So this here, I'm in our ThoughtExchange room. This is the one that we use for our master classes. So you're going to see lots of exchanges, but if you click on the Exchange Studio, you're going to find a variety of different modules based on your organizational outcomes. And we have an education version of this as well. So if you're here and you're an education leader, you're going to see ones that have different school-focused outcomes and topics. But if we were looking at, say, developing talent, let's look at this one. And I knew that I was going to be working on building some L&D opportunities and support systems for my employees. And I knew that I needed to do some exchanges around it. I could start here, and you can see that there are questions that are pre-written for you. What are the most important leadership skills that you feel all leaders should have mastery in our current environment? There's even a recommended cadence for you. There's other questions here too. How can we best support learning and development from a remote distributed workforce? At the bottom, we have resources. So who has actually hosted these exchanges and how did they find their results and how did it add value for them? And another thing that I'll encourage you to do too, as you're looking through these and thinking about question design, is the language and the phrasing can be something that you steal from here. So even if you're not going to host this exact exchange, you could look at the way that the questions are phrased and kind of copy paste from there. These questions came to life and landed in the Exchange Studio in two ways. So either a partner of ours hosted this exchange and had really successful results, or we had one of our topic experts on staff write the question and then add it to the Exchange Studio. So I'm going to show you how you can host an exchange from the studio. So if we wanted to have perhaps this one, what are some things we're doing well and what do we need to do to improve to keep our organization's culture strong and thriving? I can click on Create Exchange and it drafts the exchange for me, and then I could edit the question here myself. What are some things maybe I will just say Thought Exchange to be a little bit more specific and direct. Perfect. And then you'll notice here as well, we have the introduction. And when you create from the Exchange Studio, it pulls the introduction over for you, but you could add a little bit more context. So remember, I'm going to add my why and add my progress as well. If you're looking for that sample introduction and you're in here writing your own, remember there is this help button, just the question mark icon in the bottom right. You can click on that. There we go, and then search introduction. Use this first article, write a compelling introduction, and you can copy paste the sample part here. There we go. So then we could just fill that out and add a little bit of customization. So we need your input on our organizational culture to ensure we are the best place to work. So we can learn what's most important to everyone. We're using your thoughts to build our 2022 culture strategy. Perfect. And you can see how quick and easy that may be. One thing that I would likely do is add a personal sign off. Thank you for participating, Tila and the CF team. If I were going to update or upload a video, I would record my video in whatever format I want to, and then I would either add it as a YouTube URL here, or I would upload the file. So you can add it as a file or as a YouTube URL. The nice thing with the YouTube one is that you get all of the analytics there too. And then this feature here allows you to decide if you want the video to go above the written text when the participant is in the exchange or below the written text. Those are the ins and outs of question design. We are hoping that that's a pretty simple and straightforward and direct class for you. One thing that I hear quite often is people have a bit of a hesitancy around asking the right question. And what I'm going to encourage you to do as you're navigating, learning how to do that question design element really successfully is to lean into the Exchange Studio. So if there's a question that you can ask that's in here, there's no need to reinvent the wheel, or there's even one that you could start from and actually edit and go from there. It'll make your life easier and reduce a little bit of that anxiety around asking the right question. So we're going to move into an exchange now. And if you haven't participated in a live exchange before, as an exchange leader, you can do this too. So any exchange you can host live. I'm going to click next to the exchange here and click on present. Click OK, and then click present again. And then I'm going to zoom out a little bit so you can see my screen fully. I'm going to invite you to hop in here and to ask us your questions. So what are you curious to know about question design? I've popped the link in the chat and there is the QR code. So click on the link in the chat if you want to join from your computer and use your mobile device and hold up to scan the QR code if you prefer to join from there. If everyone can share one question, if you have them, and then rate as many thoughts of others, we have lots of time to get through this together. And of course, if you're having any difficulties getting into the exchange, just ping me in the chat and I can help you get in there. All right, I'm going to interrupt for just a moment to show you that about 80% of you are in the exchange now. And I can see there's a couple thoughts. So I'm going to move to the next slide. And we can see all of the questions as well. And then as you're rating, we're going to watch connections being made over here on the left. All right, we have about a minute left. So if you haven't made it to the rating step, please hop in and do so in the next minute and rate as many as you can. All right, your 5-second warning. We're going to move on to the final page here. So if you were facilitating a workshop like this, you could use the exchange in the exact same way. It's a really nice way to gather questions, and then you can block time to go through them while you're all together. And if you triple click on them, they expand in view. So you're able to walk through the conversation and answer everything that came up. So let's do that, exactly that. Is there a best length of question? Thinking that short and sweet may be best. Example, one sentence if possible. Absolutely. If you can keep it as clear and as short and remove any extra filler words that might be in there, it will ultimately have better results. The clearer and more direct the question, the more likely that your data set is addressing what the question was. And what I mean by that is if you ask a really lengthy question that could be interpreted in multiple ways or people could misunderstand it, then there's a chance that what they share isn't actually responding to the question that you asked. How harmful are weak questions to future participation? I'm always worried a bad exchange will turn folks away from using ThoughtExchange. If I lose them, I won't get them back. It's a really interesting idea here. Yeah, so you do want to ask the question that needs to be asked. for the outcome or the objective of the exchange. I'm not sure exactly if we have any stats around how harmful weak questions might be to future participation, but there's some things you can do to preempt that. So one is if you're concerned about the language or the phrasing of your question, you can reach out to your customer success manager and ask them for support. That is exactly their role, is to support you with question design. I did see another question come up about what support is available. And be really clear on what your outcomes are. I think a couple other pieces that go in here are that if the exchange is leaning off topic, to continue to leave it open. If you were to close an exchange midway, it can actually break trust with participants. And also to be always closing the loop and following up with reports on exchanges. I think there's another piece too, where sometimes you ask a question and what comes up in the conversation isn't exactly what you expected to. And sometimes that might require a follow-up exchange as well, which is why you are able to host multiple exchanges in the way that we offer ThoughtExchange. Can you link out in the survey questions and introduction? Yes, you can embed links. So there is this question here, is there the ability to add more than one attachment to the introduction? There's not. You can add one attachment. So you can do a video or you can do a PowerPoint. If you do have additional documentation that you're asking people to read, you could link to it in the introduction. So you could see maybe you have your video talking through what people need to do, and then you have your links in the introduction, and then people participate. Something to keep in mind though is, what is the burden or the labor of participating? And so if you're asking people to read through multiple documents before participating, will everyone really do that in a mindful and meaningful way? And could that potentially impact your ultimate participation? So how could you scale down the information that you're asking them to review before participating, while still meeting the goals of, we need them to know enough to participate in a meaningful and mindful way? All right, let's go back here. Is it effective to have two questions in one? One open-ended question per exchange. And if you're thinking about that, you are probably best exactly what this person said here, perhaps a follow-up, so two exchanges. So I'll give you a good example of this, and one way that I've seen this work well is a partner who I worked with was looking at a culture survey. They wanted to understand how people were feeling and what resources that they needed. So they had their first exchange be a little bit of a roadmap or a weather report, just very general. Do you feel supported at work? What else could we offer you? And then they had the results from that and shared them back and used that to prompt participation in another exchange. We heard from you that you need XYZ. What supports can we offer to action that for you? So they're building it into a cadence to have each exchange be really targeted and really meaningful. And I love this thought. I'm actually going to share this with our help site team, and maybe they can add this into the templated introduction. I've taken to adding a statement in our introductions about limiting thoughts to one idea each, reminding people that they can add multiple thoughts. I hoped it would help with having clearer info share. Absolutely. And there's another piece in the product too that supports that, and that's that there is a character limit when people are sharing their thoughts in reply. Sometimes people want the tendency, right, to write a paragraph in reply, and they might have 4 or 5 different valid ideas within that. So giving them a shorter form and being really clear with the instructions that you can share multiple thoughts, please just have each thought be about one thing, will make rating much easier and make that thought much more valuable to work with. All right. What support is available? Remember, you do have a customer success manager who you can reach out to for question design coaching. And then this one here, if you use a YouTube URL, is the video embedded or does it just give viewers a link? The video is embedded, so they can watch it there too. And then you have the benefit of YouTube's auto translation function. So you could turn that on and have closed captionings with different languages. And are there best practices for when and how to integrate survey questions? Absolutely, there are. We hosted a survey question design class earlier this year that we can include in the follow-up, and it's something on our radar. We also have a really great help article about survey question design, so you could search that up on our help site. And those are all of your questions. Thank you so much for your participation today. I hope this was really valuable for you and that you feel confident and prepared to go and write your own questions and run really effective exchanges. I will mention that we do have a couple other masterclasses this month. So we have a live exchange. If you want to learn how to do that live exchange that we just did together, hop in and join us next week. And then the week after that, we're talking all about working in the dashboard. So thank you, everyone. Have a fantastic rest of your day, and we will follow up with the resources from today. Take care.